BroadcastMedia.com Chicago.
And around the world where your voice is heard. This is UBM Talk.
Deb Rowe. Deborah, how you doing?
Hey, Chris, I am fine. Feels real good to be back, too.
It does, doesn't it? I miss you so much.
Thank you. I'm good, Chris. Just keeping busy. I'm trying my best not to let this election wear me down. And it's really hard not to do. So I have to, I haven't even been blogging. And it's because I can't. I really can't right now.
Why not?
I cannot. It's overwhelming to me how lopsided of this campaign, of this election cycle. It's terrible.
In the beginning, when you notice everybody gravitated towards whatever come-over guy, will say next, he's always good for a quote. He's always on the news. And I think a lot of news departments, in my opinion, got to a point where it was 24-hour Trump, and that's what it became.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that in itself is at least do 12 hours of Trump and 12 hours of Hillary. But, I do love news, and I do watch and listen to a lot of news, and I guess it's because of my love affair with news. That is really is what's behind my just feeling really burdened, really just worn down. Chris, I was thinking back to when I was in college and when I was in journalism school. Mm-hmm. And my professor, regularly, how fortunate we were to be in America. And he would always contrast that with Russia. And he would say, because, in Russia, the news agency TASS is run by the government. So they don't get, free press. They don't get free-flowing news. And I just hearken back to that, and I think that today I'm not convinced at all that our government is controlling our news, but we also are not getting a free-flowing press, a free flow of news and information. We just aren't, and it's unfortunate that individuals have to do the work. They have to go and find the information, and sometimes even that can present some problems because you don't want to just rely on blogs because those are not trained journalists most often. You really have to have, your resources that are reliable, but why should we have to do the work? That's my question. Why do we have to do the work to get the balance?
Well, because as you know, Deborah, the so-called media has sold out a long time ago. For example, I had to tell you this, you being in the media yourself, when we're looking at the pushing of the dollar amount, the pushing of the bottom line, mm-hmm. It has now become the root of everything evil. And even in journalism, if you want to call it that, with certain stations, I think need to turn their journalism cards, but they do it because now, it's always been a business. But I think we're seeing more of the business side than the journalistic side. They used to go hand in hand. And I think nowadays we just don't see one more than the other. I think we see more business for what I give you a perfect example, and I can never prove this. Mm-hmm. CNN, of course, is kind of flip-floppy with me, but we do go to them for, credible sources. I bet you a dime to a donut that when you hear the term breaking news, I bet you it's sponsored. See, it's bad form to say breaking news brought to you by Pillsbury. You just can't, because, the breaking news, we can't do that. So who's to say there's an underlying contract to say whatever the breaking news is, then because of undercover sponsorship? It wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
It would surprise me a bit.
Well, you're right. News is corporate. There's no doubt about that. But why does being corporate mean that you have to have such heavy bias? That's my question.
Because I think they have to placate to a certain audience, as you know. I think whenever they do the research for where they are, maybe one is more liberal, one is more conservative, and they placate to the majority.
Yeah, you might be right, Chris. You might be right, but unfortunately, the responsibility of the free press is to inform. It is to inform people. It is to keep us aware of the issues around us, what's impacting our lives. And if they're not doing that, then they're not doing their job.
I agree.
Yeah. So what spurred me to start all of that? It's just my frustration with the coverage of this presidential campaign. Mm-hmm. It's just, unfortunately, very, very biased.
Biased in what way?
All right. Let me say this, first of all. Donald Trump has created a lot of his own problems. No question about that.
Right.
However, a lot of the things that they are focusing on are really non-issues, and oftentimes they are only partial truths. And I've been watching this, and I did a post, I guess the last post I did on my blog, which is Deborah's World, was June 24th, and that's a while.
Yes.
And even in that, I was talking about the inherent bias in the press against this guy, and I started off by saying, I am not, and I want to even reiterate it here, I am not a rah Trump fan. But what I also am not, I am not at all comfortable with watching this coronation of Hillary Clinton, and I'm certainly not in favor of the media absolutely ignoring all of the real issues that involve Hillary. And I'm not just talking about the email. Did you even get a chance to see that movie, Clinton Cash?
No, I haven't.
Oh, my goodness, Chris. I would encourage everyone to watch the movie Clinton Cash. You can see it on the site or you can go to YouTube. Mm-hmm. But I didn't want to just take that as the gospel.
Right.
Because I people that love Hillary, but there are also people that dislike her greatly. And being mindful of that, I wanted to make certain that this film was not the product of someone who just doesn't like Hillary and would have compiled a bunch of half-truths and misinformation and was attempting to pass it off as fact. Well, then I started doing my own fact-checking. And even the few places that you can find some fact-checking, like Pundit Fact and a few other sources, even they say this guy Schweitzer, who produced this movie, he did not mischaracterize the points in the movie. Mm-hmm. When you see the movie, you really do have to wonder, why is she even allowed to run for president? Why? And there's no scrutiny. You ask the average person, did you know that for the most part, once the president, that means Bill Clinton, was out of office and she became Secretary of State, they basically were currying favors through that Clinton Foundation. All that thing is a money-making scheme. You never would believe that. You never would know that because none of the press covers that. How did Russia really get control of 1/5 of our uranium, which we all know what uranium is used for?
Right.
Nuclear weapons. The Clintons made a deal with that. They got $100 million into the Clinton Foundation from a businessman backed by Vladimir Putin to gain a big chunk of our uranium deposits. I mean, the stories just go on and on. Remember when Haiti had the big, hurricane
right.
a few years ago, and it pretty much devastated the country?
Right.
And the Clinton Foundation went in, and they were going to make everything, a lot better for the victims. They were going to deal with infrastructure through the Clinton Foundation and job creation and blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you look at this thing, and they source it, they have all of the documentation that they did nothing but rape the country further. It's unconscionable that we're not getting any of this, yet we're focusing on, Donald Trump said this, and Donald Trump, he called this person that. Those are not good things. They certainly aren't useful or helpful, but they sure as hell aren't robbing people blind by using your position in the government to do it. That's a whole nother universe, and that's what's so frustrating. It's endless examples of them. I'm going to give you a real short list just out of what came out of that movie.
All right.
And when you look, and I'm going to give you the dates, I'm not going to do all of them, but I just got a little list here.
All right.
First, we can go to 2003. It's not a bad time because Hillary was not the Secretary of State, but Bill Clinton, his speaking fees. Now, he used to make no more than $250,000, which is a nice amount of money for any former president to make for a speech. That's a nice payday.
Right.
2003, Japan, this company there, Sakura Asset Management, it was a finance corporation. They paid him $500,000. Then we move up to 2008. He got $500,000 from an organization. Then Russia paid him $500,000 in 2010 from Renaissance Capital. Then United Arab Emirates, $500,000. Nigeria, and that's really interesting, in 2011, $700,000. But you know who's paying him? The oligarchs, the people who are selling their natural resources to hugely wealthy investors tied to the Clinton Foundation. I'm going to sound like a nut if I run down a list because people need to really see the context. But nobody's talking about this, and she's literally being given a clear path because she's not being challenged. You know, she hadn't given, before she gave the press conference with the black and Hispanic journalists a few days ago. Do you know the last time that she gave a press conference before then? Guess how long?
How long?
It was 200 and almost 40 days. She didn't do a press conference. She doesn't have to do a press conference because the media, they're handling business for her. The last press conference that she gave, almost 240 days ago, she took 7 questions and walked off. This is wrong. This is very wrong because it's doing a disservice. I don't care if you are a diehard Clinton fan. I don't care if you are indifferent to Clinton or if you absolutely dislike her. We need to get a better picture of who we are at least dealing with here. And we have not been given a picture at all. Even that, what is that pipeline, the XL pipeline?
Right.
That President Obama was so opposed to, that Hillary Clinton says she was opposed to. In the film Clinton Cash, she stood in opposition to it all the way until another major donor to the Clinton Foundation, dumping millions into the Clinton Foundation. When they came up for a vote, guess what? She changed her mind. She approved of it. And you didn't see this on the news, but there were so many environmentalists out there protesting her actions. So, in other words, Chris, there's just a blackout on her dirty deeds. There's a media blackout on her dirty deeds. And that's why Bernie Sanders supporters have endorsed Clinton Cash. Yeah, many of them that came out of the campaign, they're saying Americans need to see this movie. You want to talk about big money? Oh, yeah. They're lining up behind her, and I think in good measure because they know a big payday comes if she gets into office. All right, I'm off my pedestal there. I just had to get that off because I said that's one of the things that's been weighing me down.
Yeah.
There's a total blackout to her misdeeds. Total.
Well, I can understand that, and I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm a Clinton apologist because I'm not. I don't really care for either candidate, to be honest with you. But
yeah.
let's look at what Trump and Clinton has done so far. On the onset, of course, we look at Comb-Over guy. All he's done is
you killed me. You cracked me up with that. Go ahead.
Well, thank you. Every time he gets on the podium, is not about a plan. He just recently did a plan, just now. But before that, it was always spewing out, name-calling, things of that nature. It's just all hatred. And regardless of what side of the aisle you come from, who wants to be associated with that?
I'm with you on that.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that, except for actually he has given out his plan at any number of public addresses that he's done.
Okay,
he
I must
was
have missed
before
it.
the veterans, I guess, what was that, about 2-3 weeks ago. And he laid out a 10-point plan with, lots of details there. The media didn't pick up on that.
But then he...
So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so it's not as though, and this is why I did say, Chris, a lot of this he's bringing on himself because unlike a politician who knows you stay focused on the message,
right.
Who politicians, I don't care, a guy running for president is really, or woman, they are so disciplined. They go through mock debates. This is something that they pretty much positioned themselves for since they enter politics. I'm going to run for president. Mm-hmm. And they don't get tripped up on the small stuff. By contrast, Donald Trump, he's part entertainer, but he's 100% a guy who has run his own company. He's always been the boss, and I think this is where he's suffering. I don't think campaign people are being very effective in telling him, Mr. Trump, you need to stay focused. You don't need to respond to everything. You don't need to tweet everything. No other candidate would do that. That's the I think the cost of not being a professional politician. There's pluses and there are minuses to that.
Right.
That is clearly one of the minuses.
And you're absolutely right. I mean, and the constant bullying and things like that. And to be fair, he just now came out with a unveil his economic policy platform. So I'm trying to be fair with the guy. But the thing about it overall is that what we see on the onset, when we see what moves and drives social media, and we see on the newscast, is the fact that him at that bully pulpit having a bully pulpit moment or moments. And that alone becomes, I don't know, it leaves a bad taste in people's mouth. Other people are like, okay, go Trump, go.
It does, but I was curious give me some examples of his bullying. I'm not saying that he doesn't, but I'm very interested in hearing when he's been bullying.
Well, tell you what, we'll take a break real quick, and I'll come right back with the bullying points.
All right, great.
Okay, let's take the break. We'll come back. On the phone, of course, is Deborah Rowe with Deborah's World. Also take your phone calls at 312-754-4333. Also on Facebook Live. You could do that and expose yourself and make that happen. Chris Bass and Baseline, UBM Talk on urbanbroadcastmedia.com. Stay close. Welcome back, Deborah.
Thank you, Chris.
Good
to be here.
Oh, thank you. And the question you mentioned about some of the points about Donald Trump's quote-unquote bullying. The one thing that came to mind for me was last year, I want to say around November, the CBS had the debates on their time. And so, of course, Republican, the presidential debates. And here's the thing that disturbed me. As you know, it's always an honor among thieves, meaning that you don't air dirty laundry amongst the party. This guy, meaning comb-over guy, went after Jeb Bush, and he went there. I mean, like going there when he said, "Your brother," meaning George W., did not find weapons of mass destruction. That is a no-no on the conservative side of the aisle. He went there.
Not in a primary, though, actually, because we saw the same thing during the primary on the other side, Democrat, where Sanders said that Hillary was woefully unqualified to be president. In the primary, we've seen other candidates also attack one another. That's the kind of the messy part of national politics.
Even that, though?
And I think that actually is what made him stand out, in that a lot of people did not support the war in Iraq, even some Republicans. And Trump, day one, never did support it. And I don't know if that's really bullying is what I'm saying.
Well,
Bush
me,
didn't like it,
yeah,
and many others didn't like it, but I don't know if that was bullying. He simply said he didn't find weapons of mass destruction, and we went into a war.
Yeah, well, I call it a form of bullying because here's the thing, like I said before, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, and once again, the people that I know who are family-to-family conservatives did not like that. They felt that even though, yes, when you talk about the primaries, it's he against he and she against he, whatever, that was supposed to be a no-no. This is what I'm talking to other conservatives about this. Other conservatives telling me that, look, that was not the deal. He should never have done that. And so that was a no-no.
Again, that's a matter of opinion because there are other Republicans and some conservatives who didn't want that, the war. There are many who didn't, but most went along. And so I'm saying I don't know if that was bullying more so than giving his straightforward opinion, not couching it as politicians do. Even if they disagree, obviously politicians typically will say that they agree with something because they want to stay on message, they want to stay focused.
Yeah.
And here again, this is
I don't know. I guess
do that very well at all.
Yeah, no. I guess where I come from, and that just comes off like that because here's another thing I didn't like.
Okay.
This whole recent thing that happened last week about the Purple Heart.
Yeah.
Now, the way it was explained to me once again, and what I saw on television, was the Purple Heart. He gave this, veteran, of course, gave him the Purple Heart, and as you know, that is for veterans who unfortunately die or get wounded, and so he gives it to him. He's asked in the press conference, "Is the real thing?" And he says, "Yeah." They go to the veteran, and the veteran says, "No, it's not the real thing." So, I mean, who do we believe here?
I don't know. I saw the veteran myself
on
TV saying why he gave it to him. This is what he wanted to do.
Right.
Did you see him saying it wasn't the real thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't see that.
Yeah, I caught
but
that.
I have no doubt that if you saw it, that's what it is. So I don't know. I'm only going by what I saw when he initially gave that to him, and saying why he gave it to him because he believed in what he was doing so much. My problem with the Purple Heart, though, was that he took it out of his pocket. What was it doing in your pocket? It really should have been in a case. It should have been displayed when he wanted to show people, not putting it out of your pocket and putting it back in with all the change.
It's just I'm telling and this was my dude, Deborah. It's a lot. Probably more so now than ever before in any election. Don't be wrong. Everything has its plus and minuses. I'm not comfortable with either. Can he be honest with you? I'm not sitting here and go for one or the other. It's just that I don't know that Trump guy. I would not, even if I was conservative or Republican. I couldn't go with that guy.
Yeah.
Actually,
that's how I feel about Hillary.
Yeah.
Even with and it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable because I feel I shouldn't be defending some of these things that Trump does because he walks himself into these things.
Right.
So I'm actually not defending him per se. But what I am doing is I'm really calling out the press. Even that whole debacle with Mr. Khan, that was a horrible thing. But when I go back and listen to it, he not one time did he. In fact, he called his son a hero. But Mr. Khan, when he got up and he was shaking his Constitution, his issue was that if Donald Trump had his way, Mr. Khan and his son wouldn't even, and his family wouldn't be Americans. That he was a bully, blah 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 blah. But what was his backstory? Because Trump clearly never belittled his son. So what was that really all about? Now, do you know anything about Mr. Khan?
No, we don't.
No, we should know because it's there, but the media won't cover it.
Right.
Mr. Khan is a leading immigration lawyer for Middle East immigration. He specializes in helping people to acquire, what do they call those, the EB2 visas?
Right.
In fact, his website, which he took down after it started getting some traction on certain blogs, he took it down, I believe that was last Wednesday. Fortunately, there are tools you can use to capture a website even after they, just have it shut down.
Oh, of course, yes.
Yeah, and the E2 and the EB5 immigration visas. So this was almost personal to him because one of Trump's main things is until we can vet people coming in from the Middle East, we should not be allowing them. Well, contrast that with a man who has built a successful business off of getting people into the country,
right,
vetting or not. So, I mean, this whole thing is much deeper. We get that funny kind of one-sided story, but we don't get the other side of the story. And I think that it doesn't serve us well in terms of making, I like to say, informed decisions. And even with the information, the decision still could be Trump is an idiot. But at least give people the information. And that's, again, what's not happening in this campaign.
I
can
concur.
Almost go through every single blow-up with Trump and go back and give you the backstory, the other side of the story that's not being discussed.
No, I concur with that, and I do concur that Trump is an idiot. I do go along with that. We'll tell you what, we're on the break. We'll take one more break. We'll come back on this side, okay? So hang on, Deborah, all right?
All right, Chris.
All right, Deb Rowe brings us Deborah's World. Take a break. We'll come back. Chris Bass and Baseline, UBM Talk on UrbanBroadcastMedia.com. Stay close.
You know, Chris, I didn't want to just get bogged down with Trump and the media's blind eye to all of the nefarious things in the Clinton universe. I don't want to get bogged down with that.
No, but let me say before you continue though, because I want to be fair, because you are right. You made the analogy last hour about the media coronating Hillary as next president, which should not be. It's just that, unfortunately, as you know, look, you got to have good guys and bad guys, white hats and black hats. So in the eyes of the media, of course, you got Clinton on the white hat trail, so-and-so, and on the right side, you have a come-over guy with the black hat.
But you know what? When you put it that way, you make absolutely, I think a very good argument. That's the way it works, except for here's the problem.
Yes.
We're not dealing in a movie right now.
No, we're not.
This is about the future of this nation.
Of course.
And what type of nation will we be, and where are we headed as a nation? I mean, if we are going to be, we're going to do more appeasement type things, if we're going to say our borders are open, and by the way, again, referencing my last post, if you go over to Deborah's World, it's the first thing you'll see. As said back then, what this battle between Clinton and Trump really is about, we can get caught up in all of the weeds of, stupid behavior.
Yes.
It really is, bottom line, about open borders and closing borders. It is about free-flowing immigration and trade deals. Bottom line. Actually wrote that post the day before the Brexit vote. I didn't post it till Brexit the following morning because I wanted to see, was there going to be anything else I needed to ask and add. That's why it's no coincidence. All the billionaires are lining up behind Hillary. This is not an accident. This is not a coincidence.
Right.
But even with that, we just paid a $400 million ransom, and I don't care what Obama or anybody else calls it, that's what it was. Even when they say, well, we told you all about this back in, months ago. Yeah, after, no doubt about it, some arrangements had already been made with Iran. We know the U.S. policy has been you don't pay for hostages because of what? You send a signal that you will pay whenever somebody gets taken. We just gave them $400 million now, they said, because we owed them that money and the interest accrued. Yeah, and we're under no pressure to pay them. We had just given them $150 billion when we gave them the right to proceed with their nuclear program, which they will do. I said that, and I know it's supposed so that they won't proceed, but all indications are that they are proceeding.
Right.
But my point is, guess what just happened?
What?
Iran just took another American hostage. It's laughable.
Yeah.
This is laughable, except for real lives are at stake.
Yes.
And it's not a coincidence that happened. You send under the cover of night unmarked bills, low denomination, and hours later, in fact, we now know that the plane to bring the hostages back to the U.S. literally waited hours, I think overnight. Why were they waiting? They were waiting for that money to be delivered before they could leave. It was a ransom. They get paid the ransom, and what do? They turn around, and now they've taken another American hostage. This is about where we're going to go, because I firmly believe, and the Lord knows, I hope this is not the case, you just set precedents right there. You're going to have these terrorist-sponsoring states and terrorists themselves. Obama just gave them the green light. When you take an American, we will pay. And that's something we've never done. In fact, Reagan got them free with the threat of not money, but they released all those hostages too.
Yeah.
So it just, for me, like I said, this is wearing me down because we're walking down a path we won't be able to recover from. Hey, can I ask you a question, Chris?
Yes, of course.
What did you think about the WikiLeaks release of those emails for the DNC?
Well, it's like you said before earlier in the conversation about how either side is trying to push themselves into a light to say, you know what, they're the person that's in trouble, that should not be the next president, and I should be the one that should be president. So when that came thinking about the WikiLeaks, it didn't surprise me because, as you know, it's going to come up again and again. As a matter of fact, I was just checking the schedule. The first presidential debate will be on Monday, September 26th at Hofstra University there in New York. These questions about Hillary's email is not going to go away. I don't care how many interviews she's going to do, it's not going to go away. And I think that regardless of how you think about the whole thing with WikiLeaks, they're being leaked, or whatever the case, it's a problem that is the classic 900-pound gorilla in the room. Yeah.
What's interesting to me, though, those WikiLeaks emails, which basically show that what Bernie Sanders had been claiming all along was absolutely true, that the DNC was working to derail his campaign.
Right.
That was proven in those emails, which, and of course, resulted in people, resigning, and Debbie Wasserman Schultz getting out the way, not being even able to speak
at the DNC
as she wanted to during the DNC convention. But, Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks founder, says that he's got more emails. Then the thing about it, these are not things that people have just made up. These are their own emails that have been hacked and stolen.
Right.
Do you know what his next group of emails supposedly will contain?
What's that?
He says he has proof, and I'm only reading what Assange says that the next set is going to show.
Right.
That, and let me see if I can pull that up because I don't want to read that exactly.
Sure.
But basically, because I can't find the window.
Okay.
Basically, he says that it's going to show that as Secretary of State, Hillary sold weapons to ISIS. That sounds real crazy right there.
Right.
That sounds unbelievable, doesn't it?
It does.
Except for when you go back to CNN, you go back to, and I've pulled this one up too, December 9th, 2015, and that says nothing about Hillary, and that's not the point. But this article says ISIS is armed with U.S. weapons. A new report from a prominent human rights group has found that ISIS has a substantial arsenal of weapons, U.S.-made weapons, is Amnesty International. They released a 44-page report. There's a lot of questions here. But see, if our media, and that was from 2015, and even that's kind of soft, that article, which I have read. But if the media never brings any of this up, people just float la-di-da, look at that bad Trump guy. We've got some far more serious questions over her head that'll never be raised. But he says he'll release those before the election. The reason that's significant, because if what he says is true, that they actually have those emails, they will actually be incontrovertible because those will be emails that they themselves, meaning Hillary and whoever else she was corresponding with, will have written. Those emails that really shone a light on what the DNC was doing with Bernie Sanders. You can't refute those because the only people who could have written those were the people within the DNC. So it doesn't wonder. It's no wonder Assange will never come back to the U.S.
No,
the
you're
moment
right.
he does, there's a bounty over his head.
Oh, big time,
so
big time.
There are some very, very troubling things that are out here. And I just think that, and we've seen this in other countries, diversionary tactics. You focus on basically silly stuff, non-issues, to keep your eyes off of the most critical issues. And there are some very critical issues that we are really not engaged in right now.
Well, you're on to something. I definitely concur with that, Deborah. As I always say, I love magic when I was a youth, and the first law of magic is to create a plausible diversion.
And unfortunately, as I keep saying, I am going to vote for him because there was no way in hell I would vote for Hillary Clinton. But my heart is not even there for Trump. But I get what's happening here. And I think lots of people get it, except for you can't break through that media wall. You need big media to deal with this issue.
Right.
President Lincoln, he had, I think it was like 300 journalists arrested. He had to do it.
Jeez.
Why did he have to do that? Because they were subverting the nation, really, the information. They were not telling the true story. This is nothing new.
Right.
But that was at a critical juncture in our nation's history. And unfortunately, the media were working against our nation. And he shut down over 300 newspapers. He had journalists jailed. He had to do it. I'm not recommending that.
Right.
But I will say this, it almost needs to happen now. They are subverting information to steer this country down a path that I would say, will have an enormous challenge to recover from.
There's another way of looking at it, too, Deborah. You, of course, being in radio like I've always been a fan of Art Bell. When Art Bell used to be on with Coast to Coast AM. And I mentioned before on this program, one of my favorite guests that Art used to have was Father Malachi Martin.
Yeah.
And Father Malachi Martin had mentioned about people being perfectly possessed. So, of course,
being what possessed?
Perfectly possessed people.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is, just go off the top of my head, if Donald Trump, if Donald Trump so-called represents the spinning your head, spitting out green pea soup type of possession, then Hillary is perfectly possessed. You know what I'm saying? Just because you don't see this, the eyes bulging out and things like that, like how loud he is, does not mean people do not have ulterior motives. Like, for example, I'm watching the DNC, and I gotta admit, I'm watching her speech. It was very lackluster. There wasn't anything exciting about. She's not really a gifted speaker like her husband and like President Obama. She's not. But I think once again, go back to your original point, was the fact that the media already has quote unquote crowned her president or wrong. Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, I was listening. This was on actually Fox yesterday. I was actually watching. They're doing some analysis, and one of the Fox contributors kept saying, so when Hillary becomes president, and he wasn't joking, it was on I think it was with Chris Wallace, it may have been, but he kept saying that. So it's on both sides, because we must also remember there's a huge groundswell of Republicans, not necessarily conservative, but some conservatives as well,
yes,
who are in the Never Trump camp. They actually have a website which includes many governors, some senators, former presidential nominees like Romney, who say we must never, ever support Donald Trump. Okay, so now we're asked to, so why is that? It's because he says the most offensive things. And what are those actual offensive things? One, about the whole Mexican illegal thing, it's really about the borders. Hillary says we will never build a wall. Instead of building walls, we need to build relationships. Well, this is about the borders. This is the same. It's almost Brexit all over again.
Okay.
England pulled out. Why? Because the EU, every EU country basically has an open border policy.
Right.
And what are they getting in return for that open border policy? Well, we know what they're getting. They're getting their heads chopped off, they're getting blown up, they're getting shot, and they won't stop the policy. That was a big part. They wanted to write their own ship, England, so to speak. They wanted to lead their own way. Now, they were divided. The younger people, they did not want to leave the EU. Why? Because that's all they've ever known. That's all they've ever lived under.
Right.
The older people, 40 and up, they overwhelmingly said, we've got to get the hell out of here. The people we elect, they don't have the power over the EU. So I'm simply saying all of that just to say this. We are in an ideological battle right now. It's a political campaign. It's a presidential election. Yeah. But actually, this is an ideological battle. This is the battle between when Trump talks about renegotiating trade agreements. It makes people crazy. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce, they hate this kind of stuff.
Right.
And as you probably know, they're overwhelmingly, it's a business group, but that's where they usually go with the Republicans. They hate Trump. He says, I'm going to renegotiate NAFTA. I'm not saying this guy is good, but what I am saying, the very things that they have been pushing for the last who knows how long, here comes Mr. Doofus, if you will, out of nowhere saying, you know what? No, we don't need to just have an open border. No, we don't need to let people in our country that we can't vet, especially from the Middle East. Oh, he's a hater. Oh, he's racist. You know what? It's about protecting us. Whether we like it, we've gotten so politically correct. We really have.
Yeah.
That even at our own peril, we can't even see this anymore. We're just bothered by anybody that goes against the grain.
But why are certain Republicans, regardless how they feel about the representation of what Trump is doing, why are they putting their support and everything they got and they're going all in with Trump? Why are they doing that?
Because they want to maintain U.S. sovereignty. I'm telling you, this is an ideological battle. If you look at one argument that says we need to basically clear borders out the way. You know, John Kerry, and I actually have that up on my site too, in speaking, I think he may have been at Hofstra University at the commencement speech ceremony. He told the graduates, prepare yourself for a more complex, borderless world. We used to call this back in the day the New World Order. Now, I don't like to use that term because it has connotations of crazy conspiracy people.
That's true.
But essentially, this is where we're at. We have arrived at that place where you're either for a borderless world, or you're for we want to maintain control nation. I personally don't think Donald Trump had a clue. I honestly don't what he was stepping into. If you don't think that the visceral reaction to him over silly stuff, most of this stuff is just stupid stuff. What he said about Megyn Kelly. What he has said, I mean, it may be offensive, but is it really that deep that you have the visceral reactions? No, it's not. It's so much deeper. I was looking at what they call the billionaires for open borders.
Okay.
The whole group of them. Bloomberg, several of them. I actually write about that. I need to get back to writing because I've already ahead of the curve. I'm not patting myself on the back, but I was so far ahead of the curve on this stuff. They've pumped tens of millions into doing what Hillary is talking about and fighting against what Trump is talking about. So it's not a coincidence when they get up. He's the worst. He's the worst. He's the worst businessman. I'm a businessman. I'm a billionaire. But you also have money on the table. What is that organization Zuckerberg started supposedly for immigration reform? Well, when you get down into the nuts and bolts, it's not about immigration reform. It's about opening the borders. This is where it's a lot of money involved in this. It's a lot of money, it's a lot of power, it's a lot of influence that will be threatened by this.
Right.
That's what's really at the heart of all of this. That's why you had a con. If I challenge anyone to go back and listen to Trump's comments. He never besmirched their son. But this guy also, this is all about opening up America, like they have done in Germany, like they have done in France, like they have done in Belgium, like they have done in Spain, most westernized nations are there already. So when the president says this is not, no, we are not haters. No, to give more money to more human rights causes than any other nation. But what we are not, and I hope we don't become, is so blinded by political correctness that we open up ourselves to clear and present danger. That's it in a nutshell. That's it in a nutshell.
Ready.
This is the whole issue. We're at the precipice.
Okay.
This is what this election is about. This election, and goodness knows, Chris, I'm not just saying this. I wish there were another candidate instead of Trump, one who was disciplined, one who didn't give them so many things to the... But we're at the precipice where either, and you mark my words, you will mark my words when I tell you this, if she wins, we will see immigration reform in the form of basically open borders, fully granted amnesty. She says she will increase Middle East refugees by 565%, her words, not mine. Mm-hmm. What has the intelligence community told the president, the existing President Obama? We can't vet them. We have the means and the technology on our end, but they're coming from places with no records, no data, so we can't vet anybody. It's not just the FBI, it's not just counterintelligence, but the CIA. All of these agencies have told him this repeatedly. I think you've heard that yourself. You may have read that.
Right.
But he keeps saying, but that's not who we are. People need to shake themselves up a little bit, shake it off, and start asking the hard questions. What sense does that make? Why, when your own intelligence community is telling you, slow it down, don't do it, you can't verify who you're bringing in, why would you say, let them come? Why would a presidential candidate say, I'm going to let them in and I'm going to increase it by 565%? What's going on here? Then the other guy says a bunch of silly stuff, but he also says, I'm going to put a stop to it. I'm going to stop it dead in its tracks until, and that's the part everybody always leaves off. They say he hates Muslims. He doesn't want any Muslims coming in. What he has said was, I'm going to stop it until we can verify. Actually, he's only saying what the intelligence community has been saying for months now.
Right. Slow
it down. Verify. Angela Merkel over in Germany, they can't verify. And it's horrific what's going on over there. But she keeps saying, let more in. The president in France, they can't verify any more than we can.
Right.
And they have suffered tremendously. But what did he say last week? That's not going to deter us. We're going to let more in. Chris, does any of that make sense to you?
None whatsoever.
It doesn't make sense. This is the only thing I'm saying. I'm weighed down because I know I have good common sense. And I know most people have good common sense. And I know most people have to be raising the question when the issues are really presented to them. Why would we do that? The problem is the issues aren't being presented. So people can't analyze and people can't weigh the facts.
Right.
We just get carried on this little floating cloud. You know, you got this idiot racists out here, but I employ people, please step back for a moment. Dig a little deeper. Look at the real issues that are at hand. And by that, I mean those that are going to ensure, or certainly make a great effort to ensure our security, our sovereignty, and our safety versus those that won't. And I guarantee you the distinction between the two candidates will become crystal clear.
Yeah.
Crystal clear.
Well, it's like
that was the other thing I wanted to mention about the WikiLeaks, though.
Oh,
so
yeah.
we'll see if Julian Assange will drop those emails. I'm not saying that this guy is some sort of guy you can trust fully. After all, he did, or if not supervised, directly hack emails out of our government.
Right.
But he's also been responsible for exposing things that we never would have known about. And if it is proven that as Secretary of State, and it gets so deep, and I'm not going to go there because then we are going to turn this into an Art Bell show, this show within a show. But if it's proven that as Secretary of State, she had a clear hand in getting those weapons to ISIS, even if they were being used as proxy fighters on our behalf,
okay,
Americans will be devastated. The problem, of course, is will the media really focus on it? I don't think most people even know that that's what Assange has been saying he has in his next batch of emails. They haven't even heard it. Why?
Yeah.
Why?
I think part
shouldn't that be on the news every? Shouldn't that be like breaking news? That's real breaking news.
Yeah, but you just said that's
not that Melania Trump may have been in the U.S. in 1995 when she didn't become a citizen in '96. That's not breaking news.
Yeah, but like I said before, you just said it right now. Real breaking news. We don't know what real is anymore. We to some degree have become our own reality show, and that's sad.
Chris, now that's classic. Yeah. I love that.
That's sad. It really is, because by common sense, it's not common anymore. It's not. And we got to the point right now where you just said before, we get misinformation, we get one-sidedness, and like you being a host, I try to go out and cross-reference and try to get more than one source, but we become so one-sided, even if we weren't a talk show host and then not doing research. Just because we sit for the TV set or social media, we do get one-sided on the other side of the aisle.
We only get one-sided. Yeah. This is why I started the whole thing off by saying,
right,
what is happening that's what's weighing me down, because sometimes I wish I wouldn't even look for the other side, because when you find, and let me be really fair here.
Sure.
Just like CNN, December 9th, 2015, had the article up about ISIS having a huge stockpile of U.S. weapons. Media outlet, but it's buried back on their blog somewhere. So they have some cover. Well, we reported it too, but I'm saying those should be big. They should be leading the news with.
I agree.
Not that Trump took a picture on his plane in front of a taco bowl and says, "I love Mexicans." Damn that. I don't give blah, blah, blah about that.
But
I'm serious. That's not moving me.
No.
What are these issues that are going to absolutely impact the trajectory of our nation's future?
But
that's what concerns me.
You're absolutely correct, and you're no argument for me on that, but it's not about the issues. It's about him, come-over guy, or anybody else saying the sky is falling.
Doing what now again?
Yeah, about the sky being falling. And that's what it is. It's knee-jerk reactionary, and not and talk about the issues. The issues are secondary, even push it all to the third and fourth parallel. It's not even about that. It's about reactionary situations where the real issues get pushed to the side. And you're absolutely right. I mean, once upon a time ago, we would get the issues, and once again, coming up on the debate starting on September 26th, we'll probably see a little bit more between, of course, come-over guy and big calf legs there. And, it's just one of those things where...
now, look, you acting like Trump yourself. You got more nicknames than I...
I just cut off all my hair. I realized that I'm not going to hang on to like 5 strands of hair. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. But
I like you with that look, by the way.
What, the bald look?
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that. I buff it. Keep it nice, shiny when I have to. But I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And you're right. I think what was happened over the time when it comes to media, once again, is the flash and dash of what's in front of us. No meat, no substance, way too PC, and it's up to us individually.
It really is.
Yeah, it's up to individually to find out what we deem is the truth. It's all entirely up to us.
And it's unfortunate because these are public airwaves.
Right.
They hold licenses. They really are charged with the responsibility of informing us and educating us about, these issues. And they are failing us miserably. And that's why I say I kind of wish old Lincoln could get back in office come out the grave, get back in office and round a few of them up until they get back to doing what they really are supposed to be doing.
I totally agree. Now, I know before we got started, back on the, comb over guy and big calves there. Some other things you want to talk about that's, going through your mind there in your world?
You know what? I don't have much more to add. I will. It's kind of a subtext to what we have been talking about.
Okay, sure.
And I don't have a lot of details on this, but I'm just thinking how you said in many ways, Chris, we have become our own reality show.
Yes.
I really do think that our numbness to serious information, serious news, because a lot of people don't like that. A lot of people, they proudly say, "I don't watch the news. I don't read. I don't." And I think part of that has come about because we have been spoon-fed a steady diet of entertainment. It's accessible everywhere. The reality shows have become the big stories. Anytime you have, you can get online, and every blog you go to will have some mention of a reality star. I think it kind of numbs us. And then what I was going to add, though, there is some data out there that our obsession with social media and the internet actually may be changing our brain waves a little bit. That sounds real crazy, I know, but there's research out there. And they will even, in one article I was reading, why, like, Steve Jobs wouldn't even give his son an iPad. Bill Gates doesn't allow his children a lot of time on the internet for the reasons that there's evidence that the more we spend, our brainwaves may be changed to a point. And I don't know what that means. I really don't. Does it mean that it makes us less able to pay attention? Because attention spans are really shortened now. Our attention spans are really short. But it's so much. It's just a lot of stuff. And you see, Chris, why I weigh myself down. I get involved in too many things that just weigh you down.
I know. And with the attention span being shorter, it's just a lot to choose from nowadays. I mean, you got to figure, of course, factoring, just the internet and social media, traditional television, or they call terrestrial television, terrestrial radio. The options are through the roof. So when you have to captivate an audience, you better bring it. You better bring it, because if not, they're going to hammer off a couple of seconds and then move on to the next best thing, whatever that is.
And not only had you better bring it, but you better make it short and sweet.
Yeah.
You better make it very succinct.
Right.
Because the amount of time that people spend on websites and on stories, it's constantly decreasing. We don't spend a lot of time. I don't know the last time I've seen an article more than 2-3 pages. Where articles, unless you get into Wall Street Journal, National Review, something like that.
Right.
But articles are half page, if that long. But there were times when in-depth articles meant you were going to be reading 6-7 pages. Continuing on this page, continuing. People can't tolerate that anymore. So maybe that's also a part of it.
Yeah.
So I don't know what to bring on an up note, because I know it's always good to move and close it up on an up note, but that's just where I've been.
Well, like you always have great insight, and I've always, appreciate, the way you look at things with us, Deborah's World, and I always like the fact that bringing a different conversation, discourse to what we're doing here. I've always appreciated and continue to do what you do because that's who you are.
Well, thank you, Chris. And, I just really enjoyed the opportunity that you have given me to have a voice on the microphone. The thing, my approach really is that, Chris, this is just the way I am just as a person.
Yes, you are.
When I see everybody walking down one path, I stop because I want to know why is everybody going that way? What's down the other path? I'm not saying that that's the right path, but I've just never been right because I always want to know why. Generally, the crowd, well, I'll put it this way. The crowd can usually be right, but sometimes the crowd is going down a path and they really don't even know why. I'm just going because I don't want to be different. So I try to bring up the other side. I try to find out what's the other story.
And
not everybody wants to hear the other story these days.
Well, they should. But once again, see, like I said before, I always say it on this program and beyond. To be smart requires discipline. To ask questions requires discipline. If you have no discipline whatsoever, then you could be led astray, run amok, the whole nine. Mm-hmm. So if you don't question authority or that question in general, then anybody could tell you anything. And you go along to go along. And that's on all walks of life. I think someone like yourself or me or anybody else, like, wait, and we ask the questions because there's something instinctively inherited in us to say, wait a minute, before I get with you or even think about that, let me ask a...
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And, I have to confess, and I am going to confess right now,
sure.
There's still another part of me that says, oh, my goodness, what if he wins, and what if he is a horrible president? That has crossed my mind.
Yeah.
But I quickly come back to my earlier thoughts about Donald Trump.
Okay.
His ego is so big, he won't allow himself to be deemed a failure. His ego is so big, he's going to make certain, I believe, that he surrounds himself with some of the best and brightest. Even with his economic plan, I listen to Larry Kudlow with regularity.
Yes.
And I know he and this Stephen, financial smart man, they've been working on his economic plan for months, and there are others. So on the front, he looks as though he's standing alone and just winging it. But behind the scenes, he has assembled some very fine minds that are working on policy and plans and with him. So that's why I say the moment I get that real nervous feeling like, well, what if he does? And then it'll be this crazy. I said, well, wait a minute. You don't enjoy that much success by simply happenstance or luck. It does require a level of discipline.
Right.
So he's built his billions, and people can argue about that, but he has built it. Hillary and Bill, they have hundreds of millions of dollars now, when just a few years ago when they walked out of the Oval Office, they said, we're broke. They didn't build anything. They used the government, they used their positions of power, especially her, to acquire massive wealth. Is that what we really are okay with? I don't think so. Not at the expense of our resources and our policies that will affect this country. I don't think so. So I'll just conclude for me just by encouraging people, get a deeper look, take a look at the movie Clinton Cash. You can look at it on YouTube. He even has a downloadable link that's sourced well. And then Google in, is any of this stuff true? It's stunning, the sites that come up and say, well, you can't really argue with him. But I still say, so why aren't the media covering it on the news? Yeah, Clinton Cash, it was something. And then Dinesh D'Souza has a movie out. I haven't watched it, but he has an hour-long piece from his movie where he breaks stuff down, Hillary's America. But that Clinton Cash, that's something to see.
All right, we'll get a chance to check it out when we have time. Also, Deborah, thank you for being a part and returning to Baseline. I missed you so much. I'm glad to hear your voice again. And for those of you I mentioned before on a programming note, Deb Rowe will fill in for me next Monday as I go get myself checked out. And so she'll do a fantastic job I want to thank you again, Deborah, for filling in for me next Monday.
Oh, I appreciate it. And again, I'm going to get back on my blog. It's Deborah's World. You can just Google Deborah's World and just check out some of the things that I already have posted up there. My friend, my brother, Chris Bass, thank you so much, sir. Thank your listeners. And I'll talk with you soon, and then I'll be in your seat next Monday.
Sounds good. Thank you, Deborah. I love you so much. Talk to you soon.
All right. Love you too, baby.